Welcome to Find the Humor with your hosts, Matt Miner and Connor O'Leary.
Hi, and welcome to Find the Humor. I'm Connor O'Leary.
I'm Matt Miner.
And you might notice a difference in this episode. We're recording via an app for podcasting, and we are all in different cities right now.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a pandemic going on and stuff like that. So, we're all staying at home.
I'm currently in Indianapolis in my childhood bedroom. Matt, where are you at?
I'm in a blanket fort that I constructed in my room at Purdue.
That sounds like it would be a really nice place to record audio, actually, just because it's so soft, all the structures. Well, if you like my audio quality coming from me right now, go ahead and drop some money on some fresh AirPods, because that is the recording device which I'm using right now. Matt, what equipment you working with right now?
I'm using my phone.
That's it. What phone would that be? Want to give that company a plug?
Yeah, an Apple iPhone 8.
All right, so if you can find an Apple iPhone 8 on the market anywhere and you like Matt's audio, go ahead and get that. Anyway,
one good thing about this is that this entire situation has allowed us to go all the way to LA to a truly experienced man and comedian. His name is Jared Kassebaum. We're very happy to have him on the show today. Jared, give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your experience, where you come from, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. What's up, guys? Super fun. I'm on an iPhone 10. If you like that audio quality,
I was going to ask. So if you like Jared's, probably go. It'll be a little easier to find a iPhone 10 than an iPhone 8.
Yeah, I know this is just high fidelity audio right here. We're practically in a studio. But I'm Jared. I went to Purdue University, graduated in 2017. And during my last couple of years there, I started doing some stand-up. And the first year of that was just like open mics every now and then. It was like, really on a campus like Purdue, it was hard to do more than like really one or two a month, trying to do like all the student mics and then go down to Indianapolis whenever I could, or up to Chicago, which was pretty rare. And then, but my senior year, started doing it a lot more. Also started kind of like hosting some things, like hosted Battle of the Bands and different events like that, just getting stage time to kind of work out that muscle as well. But then after graduating, I moved to Chicago actually for about 9 months, pretty briefly, mainly because I was just kind of like a scared little boy trying to figure out what to do with my life. And my sister was up in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just lived with my sister for about 9 months. And I did some stand-up up there, but definitely was in honestly a quite depressed state. So that wasn't a whole lot of fun. It wasn't until I was able to move to LA that I started attacking it significantly harder, and been here actually just past 2 years, a couple weeks ago, being in LA. So that's kind of my geographic journey. But with stand-up, it's been such a fun ride, writing jokes and doing improv out here and doing a lot of stand-up, starting to travel a little bit more, doing stand-up. What was the question?
Yeah, I saw that you recently did like a pretty big road trip around like the Southwest doing stand-up. Is that right?
Yeah, that was so fun. Yeah, I'm finally getting to the point where I know people out here in LA that are pretty much from anywhere in the country, so I can like hit them up and say, hey, can you give me a connection to whatever town, and help me organize a show out there. So I was able to I got into a comedy festival in Eastern Texas in a town called Paris, which is a little bit north of Dallas. And so I was in a festival out there, and that was kind of the impetus for the whole trip. But I was able to then contact a bunch of small towns along the way. Or not all small. I mean, I did Phoenix too, but a bunch of towns along the way. And like was able to connect with different comedy scenes and just like pretty much drive 6 to 10 hours, do a show that night, find a friend of a friend, mainly. Like I was staying with people I barely knew or had like maybe met once, crash on their couch, get up the next morning, shower, and hit the road for another 6 to 10 hours to the next town. And then did that for pretty much 7 days straight there and back. And it was a blast.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was honestly
one
of the more fun. I mean, I'm hoping that it can be a more regular thing. I'm at a point where doing more festivals. I've started to do some of the clubs in the same region too, like Tucson, performing more in Phoenix occasionally. Definitely, I go down to San Diego to perform. It's been about one weekend a month because there's like 5 comedy clubs in San Diego, and I'm like kind of in with two, sort of 3 of them, and so I'm able to like do a weekend of like somewhere between 2 to 4 shows at each of those places about every 4 or 5 months, and so that ends up being down there every now and then. And there's some really good shows. There's just so much more stage time in San Diego than LA too.
So, oh really?
But just because LA is so saturated, so like when
that makes sense.
I rarely do a set in LA that's longer than 10 minutes. If I do, that's like really rare. But in San Diego, I've done 15 to 20 minutes pretty consistently.
That's pretty awesome.
So even just going from LA to San Diego, there's that much fewer people.
Yeah.
What is it, like 2-hour drive?
Yeah, it's drive? Like, I mean, that is one of the drives, two and a half or so. That's one of the drives.
That's insane.
That's one of the drives that really varies depending on the Southern California traffic. I mean, if you leave at 4 p.m., that drive is a 4-hour drive. So it's like, but if you do that in the dead of night, that's like a little bit less than 2 hours. I mean, I've driven. One time I did, like right before Christmas this last year, I had a club weekend at a club called the Madhouse in San Diego. It was like the 20th and 21st. And I drove back to LA after the 4th show on that Saturday. And that drive was like an hour and a half because I was also like kind of running on the high of just like crushing a show. And I was like going and the highway was like empty, and I was just like whizzing down that highway at like 90 miles an hour.
That's awesome. I honestly didn't know they were that far apart because, I'm from the Midwest and I've never gone any farther west than Chicago. So I've always just thought like, oh, San Diego and LA, they're like right next to each other.
I mean, in a sense,
but that's like saying that like, well, yeah, but I honestly didn't even know that San Francisco was like halfway, like it's in the middle of California. I was like, oh yeah, you got San Francisco, San Diego, LA. They're all right there on the coast.
No, San Francisco's far because that's like a 7-hour drive, and I don't really. I've never done that drive actually.
Oh no, why would you? That's 7 hours. That's terrible. Well, that
okay. Well, as we've exposed in previous podcasts, Connor's idea of reality can be somewhat skewed sometimes. But
have we discussed that before?
It's no, it's just kind of evident.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
But Jared, it's awesome to have someone of your expertise on the show. But
yeah, puff me up.
What we truly want is, we all write jokes. Me and Connor, aspiring comedians, done a little bit of stand-up here and there. Like you said, kind of hard to get on open mic circuit at a place like Purdue. We know that you have jokes that didn't work out or that are still in development. And so those are what we want to hear. So if you just want to hit us with your first one, just
jokes that are not doing well, that's what we want to give the taste of.
Either jokes that are not doing well or jokes that you have like kind of written but you're like still fleshing out, or you just honestly, Connor and I have had jokes in the past where it's just one sentence of something that we thought was funny.
Yeah.
Literally not even a joke, but just
like we had like a 20-minute conversation based on the prompt tree people, and we still don't really know what my original thought was, but so there's no pressure to be right or wrong. But do you have
I think Tolkien kind of already figured out the tree people pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I'm assuming you do have like kind of a maybe a notepad or a section on your phone where you write down all your ideas. So if so, just maybe go through that and just read something that you want to kind of piece out with us.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I have like a note on my phone that I just kind of keep. That's more just like premises and stuff. There's not really any punchlines in there. And then usually what I'll try to do is translate them into actual jokes with punchlines. And then I have a notebook that I carry on me at all times too, because there's so many social situations to where whipping out your phone is kind of rude. But if I whip out a notebook, I look really studious.
Yes.
So that's
I just did that last night.
Completely different.
Yeah, I'm an artist. What are you going to try to stop me? Yeah,
exactly.
Totally. I started carrying around a little notebook on me during college, partly because there were classes where the professors were sticklers, and I couldn't like whip out my phone to take a note. And so I'm on I just looked, I'm on my notebook number 51 of my pocket notebooks.
Oh, wow. How little of a notebook are we talking right now? Like wallet
it fits
size?
in my back pocket. Yeah.
Okay.
It fits in my back pocket. They look like passports, honestly.
Okay.
It's like that size.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And what?
Did you say 51?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I mean, I write other stuff in there too. It's not. It started out as just a notebook, like a joke notebook. But then it definitely has turned into like just anything I don't want to forget. So sometimes that turns into just like observations about life, or depending on the circumstance, it can end up being a little bit of a journaling technique just to kind of like vent my emotions. I'm very much a verbal processor, which is I think why I like to perform too. But like I can, for me, if I don't have somebody to process to, I need to like write it down to like just to like get that emotion even out of my head, even if it's just a quick little scribble. But once it's on the paper, it can escape my mind. But before it's on the paper, it ruminates in my head, and it has to come out in some way.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I do the same thing just on my phone, so it just looks a little more rude when I do it is all.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's one of the reasons why I switched to notebook, because it's like, who's going to tell you to stop writing?
Yeah.
I'm just picturing like Connor's mom being like, Connor, no phone to the table, and Connor just being like, I'm journaling.
Yeah.
And
the funniest thing though is like because I used to have a notebook, but I stopped doing it because I was like, my phone's just with me all the time. But when I was doing it, I was like, damn, this looks so fucking professional. I look like a goddamn journalist. But at the same time, if you could see the shit I was writing down, it was like, what the fuck is up with flamingos in their backwards knees? It was just like the dumbest shit, but it looked so fancy.
Yeah, one of my favorite memes, which I know it's stupid to talk about memes on a podcast, but there's a comedy meme about a kid, but it's like an open micer, and he's like, I don't know, has some like poop joke, has some fart joke about Taco Bell, and then the next scene is like him talking on a podcast, and he's like, yeah, comedians are philosophers, that's totally what people act like. So many comedians are like, yeah, we're the only ones, I don't know, like speaking truth into the world. And then I'm like, dude, you do dick jokes nine times out of 10. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, we're like philosophizing about what?
Yeah, that's not philosophy. That's just like the insides of your mind that nobody really wanted to come out anyway.
Yeah, and like sometimes comedians will say like deep stuff, but at the same time, it's not even what they're saying. Sometimes it's just how they're saying it, which is funny. But no, I love that approach to comedy, because I think you look at like George Carlin, he was saying like really controversial philosophical stuff every once in a while, but at the end of the day, he was most known for saying the 7 dirtiest words that you can't say on television.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
So I can go into
Jared, let's get to your jokes.
Yeah. Man, you guys don't want to go first? That's a lot of pressure.
All right, here. I can go first.
Okay.
I don't want.
Yeah, Matt. I was wondering, do you have any?
Do you have any? What it looks like?
Yeah. Matt, I was wondering, do you have any like quarantine thoughts? Like, do you have any thoughts that you've kind of gone insane and written down?
Oh goodness,
I was wondering, like, if you don't, that's totally cool.
Actually,
good for you for keeping your sanity.
There was one that I had, but it was because I went to the airport. This thing has been stuck in my head because when I got on the trolley for the airport to go from like one terminal to the other, it was like it was in the Denver airport, and it was like, the doors are closing, and then there was like a da da na 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 na, and I was like, oh, I wish I could just say like random things throughout the day, and then just be like da na 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 na, like there was just like a jingle that I could just like make everyone hear right after I said it. It's like, we're out of toilet paper.
Did the
da na da na na na? Did
the voice say it, or was it just like a tone that followed
No, it was like a tone.
Oh, okay.
But wouldn't that be better if the voice said it?
It would be so much better.
I would pay attention more if I was like, I would be like, who the fuck is singing right now? And then they'd be like, oh, that's the announcement. They're letting you know that the doors are closing.
Yeah.
So that's been my only repeated quarantine thought, is just thinking about the funniest way that I could possibly like put that into like a bit where it's just like I just have different phrases like, and I'm having Fruit Loops. Da na 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 na.
Yeah, it's got to be like a statement. to get people's attention.
Yeah,
but also that'd be such a killer tag on the very, very end of a set. That'd be your like, thank you. That's to do that one last time at the end.
That's true.
Like do that joke at the beginning, and then whatever your last thought is, you literally just add the tone thing, and then be like, thank you. That's my time. It would just feel like such a succinct set, you know?
That's true. It just like bookends, like boom, boom, slap it on either side.
You need a good callback. And
then everyone. For
your tight five, you need a good callback. It make people love a good callback.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you can get a callback in that short of a time, you know,
like they're not going to forget much within 5 minutes. So if you can set something up and then immediately jump topics, then I think you might be able to effectively do a callback like that. But I do think that is a lot of fun. Because you only really hear you only really hear tones like that for like in the subway, and it's always like when the doors are closed. I don't know. It's always to get the people's attention, but it's always after they've made the announcement. I don't know. Like
at the end of my set, just be like, and I hate shrimp. Da, 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 da. And then just,
that's good. I like it.
Pete Holmes has a joke that reminded me of where he's like, you ever walking through the airport and hear somebody tell you information and then just ask yourself, like, who books that? How do I get on that? I just think that's so funny, because especially in LA, that is such the mentality of all the comedians of like every single thing. People are just like, how do I get on that? How do I get on that show? How do I get on that lineup? Who do I got to talk to?
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that's true.
And
just like nothing seems out of reach for them.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like it's so different doing comedy at a university, because it's like, oh, like some of my really close friends are the ones who are organizing these open mics, so I don't have to be worried about, finding open mics to do and stuff like that.
True. Do you guys ever go to Indianapolis and do any of those mics?
I've gone to watch, but I've never built up the noise.
Those guys are really good. Yeah, there's some really, really fun mics in Indy.
Yeah, well, Jared, do you need another example of...
I mean, I've got a couple.
All right,
so like my style of stand-up is definitely a little bit more... when I started, I was very story-based, and now I'd say I'm significantly more like small punchlines and like kind of fast-paced one-twos. But but so I guess I got like a couple different types of jokes. So like I love trying to figure out how to like insert a good pun. But one pun that I came up with recently was and I've done this live a couple times, and it hasn't gone nearly as well as I thought it would, but here we go. But I just say, I was like, I saw a girl who was really seizing the day the other day, and I was like, Carpe diem, girl. Which I think is hilarious. When I thought of that, I was laughing so hard at myself.
That's one of those that I could definitely, like, I think it's hilarious, but I could definitely understand why it hasn't been doing the best.
It's a pun at the end of the day, Like,
totally.
I don't know. I feel like I run into the same problem as well. Like, I'll make a pun that's really fucking clever, and nobody will laugh at it, and I'll bring it up, and I'll say, guys, why is nobody laughing? That was clever as fuck. Yeah. And then everyone's like, it was a pun. We're not going to laugh at your shitty puns. And that's just how it goes.
Everybody thinks that all puns are shitty, and that's just not the case. There are some good puns.
I know.
That is not the case at all, no.
See, and I was thinking about this the other day. Why do people hate puns so much? Is it because, like, I don't know. I can't think of a reason. Like,
I think they're so easily reusable. I think at the end of the day, people, so puns are almost always associated with dad jokes at this point in vernacular.
That's what I was thinking.
And I think I think the reason that is because puns don't take a lot of context, which I think for my stand-up style, I enjoy that because it allows me to like really quickly tell multiple jokes in a row that feel kind of esoteric, because there's not, I think comedians either need one really solid through line, or they need to be so scatterbrained that is their through line. And I think I always go for the latter. And so like, but I think that we've begun to associate puns with dad jokes because dads can just whip them out whenever they want with no context, and that's usually how they try to make a 4-year-old laugh. But a 4-year-old never did a Carpe diem joke. I mean, that's a quality pun, you guys. I mean,
yeah, that's true. You're totally right. But see, that's what worries me about a person is I don't want to grow up and then grow up more, and then in like 15, 20 years, I'm just like dressed exactly how my dad is dressed right now.
Yeah,
and
New Balances.
I'm telling puns that I'm like, come on, guys, that was funny. And then they're like, Dad, you have to stop.
But also what happens with dads, and we can move on in a second, but also what happens with dads is once you become a dad, you interact with your own kids so much, you lose a lot of any inspiration to have new material other than kid humor. And so
I bet. I know.
Yeah,
I was thinking like Mike Birbiglia's latest special was like all about his kid, which is fine. But and like it was really funny, but it was just sad for people like me who can't relate to that aspect of life. So I couldn't enjoy it as much as other people.
No, totally. I loved his new special, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like, even Pete Holmes, who's my favorite comedian, his last special is like 75% about his new baby. And it's like, because once you have a kid, that's your life. And that's awesome. And that's dope. But it's also like, yeah, you're not going to be like, yeah, I was going out the other night. Like, that's just not going to be, that's not going to be your premise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think to tie it back to what you were asking originally about why people don't like puns, I think what I was going to say even before we started talking about dads is because it has to do with the people who tell them. And usually the people who tell them aren't these witty people. It's usually these like super dry humor, like not a lot of effort going into them. So people are just so like done with puns all the time that like even when there is like a good one, people are like, no, I can't approve that or else it'll get worse.
Yeah. But when you get a good one, I
definitely think
it's impressive. Like I will never laugh at a pun, but I'll be like, all right, that was clever. That was clever, but I will not laugh at it.
So Jared, tell me, in the sets that you've tried to use this joke, is that just the lead in? Is just like the scatterbrained, or is there like a story leading into it?
No, so I have a solid, I would say, 6 or 7 minutes at this point of like one-liners or maybe two-liners, like maybe 2 punchlines, but they don't. I have no connections between them. Like I just go and then just kind of like punch and then pause, just wait a tremendous amount of time for the laughter to subside, and then the next joke. That was a joke, but and so that's, and then usually if I have a long set, so if I do like a tight 5, like a couple of weeks ago, I did a comedy festival in front of a couple club bookers in Santa Clarita, and it was just like a 5-minute set, and so that was like just like pretty much straight one-liners, because on a short set, that's all I'm gonna do. If I reach 10 minutes or longer, I'll usually do like maybe 5-6 minutes of my one-liners and then move into my longer form jokes after that.
Cool. That's a super cool method.
I'm just curious if it would land differently if there was a little bit of intro, because then people are connected to them, and then you hit them with the pun and they're like, oh, that entire setup was just for fun.
I think that'd make it worse, in my opinion. I don't want there to be a huge setup for one pun. Like, I think that's
also true.
I think to me, at least what I have come to prize in my joke writing, especially when I think of a funny punchline, I try to think, how can I get there the fastest? In a way that still packs the right punch. Because I think there have been times where I've told jokes and I'll listen to my own set, because you record your set or whatever, and I'll listen to my set and I'm like, man, I took way too long to get to that punchline. And then you realize like, oh, I don't even need to say the beginning. Like I'll give an example. So I used to have a joke about Transformers. The premise is essentially like, what do the Transformers do in their off time? Are they just like cars, like for the years in between the movies? Like, do they like, and then like, what about the Decepticons? Like, they're like freaking fighter jets. Are they killing people in their, like, in between the movies? That used to be the premise of the joke, which I think is already kind of funny. And I was like, it's like Decepticons, they're killing people in their off time, but Optimus Prime, he's a semi-truck. He just runs a moving company in between the movies. But that transitioned into, then one of the jokes was my tag on the end of that joke was, I was like, speaking of which, I was like, oh yeah, he runs a moving company during his off season. 2 men in a truck, more like 2 men and really bored robot. And then which is a stupid punchline. But then I go, you guys know that company, 2 men in a truck, right? They're a pretty big company these days. They need to change their name to 2 men in a truck and a bunch of other men and a bunch of other trucks and a corporate office in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah, this ain't your mom and pop shop anymore. We're a business.
Exactly. And so that used to be the full joke, but then I realized, like, by far the funniest punchline of that is the 2 men in a truck thing. So now I just go, have you guys heard about that company, Two Men in a Truck? They're a pretty big company these days. So like, I don't even do the Transformers part anymore because I realized that the punchline that really kills in that whole thing was just the Two Men in a Truck thing. And so at this point, that's just part of my kind of like fast one-liner part.
Yeah.
That's like a 30-second joke.
That's super cool. I did a 5-minute open mic one time, and for like 4 minutes and 30 seconds, I really did not budget my time appropriately. I was going to talk about 2 topics, and for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, I talked about the first topic, and then I don't remember what it was, but the second topic I talked about was I was going to get into the metric system, and I was going to talk about how like one of the arguments for why America doesn't switch to the metric system is like, it would be hard for like older generations to adjust. And like my response to that was like, fuck them, you know, they can learn. Like, and if they don't, oh well, you know. So like that was my whole bit, and I didn't get my first laugh until I started talking about the metric system. I was like, wait, and like I got the light, and I was like, I have so much more to say. I wasted all my time.
Yeah. Well, at an open mic, that's kind of the point. But yeah, you'd want to figure out how to shave that down for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh no, I would just scrap that first topic altogether. It didn't get any laughs. It was terrible. I was like, oh, this will be great, but never was. All right. Well,
that being said, I have a question for Jared really fast.
What's up?
So kind of going off of that, how many open mics would you say that you had to do before you found like a succinct set where you were like, all right, all of my material is like pretty good. I got this. Like you were talking about doing stuff like at Purdue and Indy and Chicago and stuff like that. And then even when you got to LA, I guess I would say just like how important is just like physical stage time in developing
I think
this?
Incredibly important. Yeah, I mean, incredibly important. There's so many different facets to that because it's like I think translating conversational funny into stage funny is the biggest jump, right? Like there are so many people that are funny in their own living room that are trash on a stage. And that's, I think, the biggest jump is just becoming comfortable enough that you're not conscious of being on stage. But then, of course, on top of that, there's just so much experimentation within the jokes that you never know what's going to work. You realize sometimes that the way you say it is funnier than the joke itself, or vice versa. Sometimes you realize that you need to change the way you say it. I think stage time, is incredibly important. When I was starting out in Indy, one thing I heard a lot on podcasts and stuff too, or just in general, was like, you need to try to figure out, how to get up as often as possible, as many nights a week as possible. And at the end of the day, move to a place that probably can actually sustain at least the opportunity of daily stage time, if not your actual pursuit of daily stage time. And, in America, it's really only LA, Chicago, New York that can sustain daily stage time. Unless you're, already big enough that you can do all the small towns anyway. And in Indy, there's like, I would say 5 really good mics. So there's like 5 good mics around the week in Indianapolis, and then a bunch of crappy mics. In LA, there are thousands of crappy mics, I assume. I mean, there's so many thousand crappy mics. There's practically an open mic in every neighborhood on every night of the week. But they're all usually just performing for other comedians. I've successfully not done open mics since September. I haven't done an open mic since September, which has felt really good.
Wow.
Just because I've been doing about 3 or 4 like booked shows a week at this point, on like independent shows around town, or like I said, going to San Diego or Orange County and getting more stage time. And so most open mics, at least in LA, are only 3 minutes. So it's like, if you're going to do 3 minutes, I can just do out of a 15-minute set that I'm doing in Orange County or San Diego, I'll just take 2 minutes to try out new jokes rather than go to an open mic for 3 minutes and waste 2 hours of my time with like subpar dick jokes, which is what most of those are anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's super cool though, that you're not just doing open mics.
When I moved out here, I thought I had a good tight 5 or even 10 minutes, and on some level, I'm still proud of what that looked like. But my current, like, if somebody told me to do a tight 5 now, that looks drastically different than 2 years ago. And I would say I only think I found my voice in a significant, distinct way in the last year of like becoming more kind of, like I said, like more like zingers and like fast paced punchlines. That's more my style now, and that wasn't me at least in any intentional way, until the first time I actually did a weekend at a club in San Diego. One of the club bookers came up to me after I think my second set there, and she was like, "I love how you do one-liners. Nobody does one-liners anymore." And I was like, I didn't even realize I was doing one-liners. But then once she said that, I was like, oh, that is kind of my strength right now. And then I started to lean into that. And then the last year has been me kind of trying to push toward that, just because it does set me apart quite a bit.
So from just like what you've been saying, you've reminded me a lot of kind of like a Dimitri Martin sort of approach to comedy.
Sure. Yeah. What do you
and
mean
just
by
the
that?
fact that when you were talking earlier about how it's either have like a string through the stand-up, or you have I forget the word that you use, but it's just so like random that is their string. That is like, I would say that is exactly how like Dimitri Martin is, and like he'll just have like a quick joke and then just like not even address that he's changing, and then just launch straight into another joke.
Totally. I think for me, it's like Martin or like Mitch Hedberg and Bo Burnham have been really all pretty influential in that. Or do you guys know Gary Goldman? He's probably my favorite guy that's like doing clubs and stuff right now. He's just, his joke writing is the best joke writing in the game right now.
Wow.
His word choice is so particular. I mean, on some level, I think he's kind of going to be. I think he could be considered the new Seinfeld in that regard. Of like, you can tell he's just so his attention to each detail of every sentence is so in tune. He's not up there winging it, which at least to me I appreciate. I like the guys that can wing it, that can just kind of like have a topic and be funny, and I appreciate that type of humor. But at least what I'm drawn to write is the humor that is like, I know why this is funny, and I've written it to be funny.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, do you have any other jokes you'd like to share with us? You've shared with us a pun, but you also said that you had premises that you wrote down. I'm just curious, like what type of premises those are. If you have
the
those
one that I've been trying
readily
to figure out how to
available
turn
with you.
into a stand-up joke that just hasn't worked. I've done it a couple times live, in that more just kind of trying to like just spitball and see what it feels like. So like about a year ago now, I went on a date with a girl that ended up, I didn't know how old she was, and she clearly didn't know how old I was. And it turned out that she was 9 years older than me. And we figured that out like in the middle of the date. And both of us kind of like had a moment where we kind of like sat back and were like, how did this just happen? And that story cracks me up every time I think about it. And it's just been so hard to like get to the punchlines fast enough for me to feel like that joke is worth it, because there's just so much backstory. But to me, that joke just cracks me up, because the way we figured out that we're 9 years apart is because we were talking about musicals, and we were talking about like Hamilton. We both big fans of Hamilton. We were bonding, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't think High School Musical gets enough credit." And I was like, "Yeah, right there with you." And she was like, "Yeah, when that came out in college, I loved it." And I was like, I didn't say anything at first, but in my head, I was like, "Did you say college?" It's like, that came out when I was I was like,
do you mean High School Musical 3?
5th grade, and I was like, that because she was like, me and my roommate, we were like so embarrassed that we liked it, but it was so fun. And I was like, I wasn't embarrassed at all. I was in the target demographic. Like, I don't know. And in the actual way the story happened, like I waited probably like 15 minutes to figure out if I was like how to bring this up to be like, hey, and eventually there was like a lull in the conversation, and I was like, hey, I don't know how old you think I am, and I'm sorry if this changes the date, but I'm actually only 23. I was 23 at the time, and I was like, I'm only 23. And she straight up goes, "You are a baby." I know, because she's 32.
Oh no!
And
that's so weird.
Yeah, it was it was so funny. And the date was still pretty enjoyable, but obviously we're not seeing each other anymore. And I think she definitely had a moment where she like stared off into the distance, like clearly like either I couldn't tell if she was asking herself like, what the heck did I do? Why is God punishing me in this way? Or like what was going through her mind in this? But that's just one of my favorite. That's just one of those stories that I find myself telling friends a lot. And it's like, which to me means it should probably be a joke somehow. But I've just been trying to figure out how can I like hit it with the most punchlines,
Yeah, well, no, I've totally heard that before from people. Because like it's not something that I've encountered. But a lot of people have said like, yeah, dating in college is the best because you can just assume anybody is within 3 to 4 years of your age at any given point. And they're like, as soon as you graduate and go to a city, you never know. And I had a buddy telling me, he was like, yeah, I was at a bar one time and I was really drunk and this girl kept buying me shots. And I was like, damn, this is awesome. This girl's buying me shots. And then a buddy of his had to like pull him to the side and be like, dude, she's a mom. And he was like 22 at the time. So I totally think that that's like definitely a relatable thing for a lot of people. And I even, but at the same time, like dating 9 years apart isn't.
I think it's just hilarious.
Like that's not terribly weird. I have a couple friends that have dated with a wide age gap, but I think the way you found out is so funny. Just like High School Musical specifically.
It's weird. I mean, obviously, I don't think age inherently poses a massive issue to that, but I do think that. I don't know. At 23 and at 32,
that's a very big gap. Yeah, that's two different, completely like areas of life. But one way that I feel like you could phrase this, especially like in your sort of like quick punch like sort of thing, is do a little bit of research and like figure out like, all right, this and this came out like 9 years apart. This and this came out 9 years apart, and then you'd be like, I'm blah blah blah, she's blah blah blah, just like like.
Yeah. I like that for sure.
She's Snapchat, or like, no, it'd be the other way around. But
yeah. Well, no, because you said in those 15 minutes when you waited to ask her, how old she thought you were, I was wondering, like, what types of other things was he asking in order to gauge it? I don't know. The question that came to my mind was like, hey, just out of curiosity, how vividly do you remember 9/11? Because when you're a kid, you're not going to remember that. But I love how that's kind of like, and that's, but somebody who's 9 years older probably would. So, and I love how that's like such a gauge as to how old somebody is.
Well, the one thing we did talk about in that 15-minute gap is the movie Good Will Hunting, which is one of my favorite films. And and this is so funny to me. So she's apparently had never seen it. She's like, I've actually never seen it. And I was like, how have you never seen Good Will Hunting? It's one of my favorite films. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, and you were actually alive. Like, you actually
when it came out.
were of a viewing age. I mean, I was technically like, I had just been born when it came out. But I was like, you were 10 when it came out. You should have. Yeah. And so I even like called over the bar we were at is a bar that one of the bartenders is a regular at the coffee shop that I work at, is a guy named Johnny. And I was like, hey, Johnny, come over here. And he was like, what? And I was like, can you believe she's never seen Good Will Hunting? And he was like, what? You've never seen Good Will Hunting? She was like, no. And he goes, well, how old are you? Clearly looking at her, thinking she's younger than she is, right? Because, again, I thought she was like 26, 27. Yeah. She has a very young face. She's an actress out here. She has commercials and stuff. So it's like, you have one of those like kind of commercial faces that's incredibly ambiguous with your age, so she could play. I'm sure they could put her in makeup to make her look like a mom, but she could also be an 18-year-old. And so he clearly thought she was young too. And he was like, "Oh yeah, but how old are you?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm 32." And he kind of looks at me and he's like, "Yeah, you should have seen Good."
No. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Now is that after? That had to have been after.
That was after the high school
that you were different ages.
I told her.
Oh man.
It's in that little gap.
Okay. So you knew for a while.
I couldn't figure out how to bring it up. Like, how do I do that? And shoot it. Like that's.
This is pretty much done. Oh man.
Yeah.
You
know that's not going to go like at that point because she's wanting something very different than I am, probably.
100%.
That's super fun. We are coming down to about that time. Are there any last minute one-liners you want to share? Any advice you want to share? Matt, any questions you have or anything at all from the peanut gallery?
I mean, there's so much to talk about, but I do think stage time is just so important. But especially with you guys being able to do the crazy monkeys and stuff, that's huge just to be comfortable on stage. But even then, I don't know if you found this at Purdue, at least out here, there's somewhat of a, like, stand-ups and improvs don't really like each other. And so to find people that do both is rare. You know, I mean, I do both, but there's a lot that's not super common just because most people, I think stand-ups usually are like, well, I actually write my jokes and I give opinions. And then improvs are like, I'm funny on the spot, which is way better than having to write it. And there's like this weird pretension on both sides.
Oh, interesting.
But I think to be able to like maintain doing both is going to be really beneficial to you guys in the long term. Because at least for me, like especially from a hosting standpoint, because I also host my own like monthly show out here, and doing improv has, I think, helped me, just leaps and bounds from a hosting perspective to be able to like keep the energy of the room up, even when I don't have a specific joke or opinion that I'm sharing, and I'm able to just kind of like interact with the audience, and that kind of stuff has been so fun to have. But are either of you guys thinking like of moving to one of the 3 cities?
I mean, I personally am.
Yeah, me too. My plan is Chicago at the moment, just because I am kind of leaning on the improv side of things, improv and sketch, that is. But definitely, it's not something I want to stop doing by any means. Yeah, well, Jared, thanks so much for being on our podcast. Do you have any social media or shows coming up within the next few months that you'd like to?
I had so many. I think I had to cancel like 12 shows. It's such a bummer, and that's just growing as the pandemic goes on. And tonight I was supposed to have a show at Grey House. Like how crazy?
No, it's true. Yeah.
I was going to be in town. I was going to be in town for 2 weeks doing shows in Indiana and like hanging out with people starting a couple of days ago. And then now I'm still in my apartment in LA right now. So yeah, I don't really have shows coming up. I don't know when I'm going to be in Indiana next to hit that audience. If any listeners are in Los Angeles, I run a monthly show in Culver City. That they can find me on social media. It's called the Jerry and Friends Comedy Variety Show. It's mainly stand-up, but I try to add some character and some improv as well. That's a pretty fun show. Been having more and bigger headliners that are able to make appearances once I become friends with them and stuff. And that's been really fun. I mean, I've had some people on that show that have just been mind-blowingly fun to have on, that I've like until recently looked up to for years, and then now they're doing my show, which is fun.
That's awesome.
And then social media, Instagram's best for that for sure, which is at Kassebaum, KASSTHEBOMB. But yeah, and also follow this man on Twitter. I follow you on Twitter, and I love seeing the content you post. It is my favorite stuff. Yeah, no, it always makes me laugh. I love seeing other people being brave and posting themselves being stupid on Twitter. So it makes me happy. That's me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Well, thanks again for coming on the pod. This has been Find the Humor. Join us in the future when we keep doing these remote podcast recordings. And as we say at the end of every episode, Matt, finish the phrase. If you don't know, if the door hits you where the good Lord splits you.
Is that a phrase?
No.
Okay, well, I'll figure that out some other time. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Super fun.
Thank you. Thank you for being on here, Jared.
Thanks so much. Bye.
This has been Find the Humor with Matt Mina and Connor O'Leary.